the children's meeting down where it's normally done, but some of the gray-haired children scare me a little bit. So I'm going to share a story tonight from a man that used to work in a zoo, so we've got a lot of animal stories. To any of you, what is your favorite animal? Owl? Who said that? Okay, this is not going to be about an owl. It's going to be one of my favorite animals is a monkey. And not because I acted like one. I just thought monkeys were really neat. Either a monkey or a bird that knew how to talk. That would just be really cool. But tonight we're going to talk about some perpetual adolescence. There are two kinds of chimpanzees. Those that let things happen and those that make things happen. Our zoo had both, and they both caused a pile of trouble. Zoo chimps are bored. They really don't have enough to do, and it makes them a little crazy most of the time. Most of their time is spent waiting. They wait to be let out in the morning. They wait for enough food to get them through the day. They wait to be let in at night so that they can eat their fill and sleep till morning. They watch people watching them, and sometimes they throw things at them, disgusting things. They fight a little and play a little, but mostly they wait. So it's not surprising that the day they were offered an opportunity for diversion, they took it. You see, one of the zoo patrons, somebody at the zoo, but it wasn't a worker, it was somebody there just going to, like you go to the zoo, to see animals. One of those people noticed that there was a 50-foot long, 1-inch hose neatly coiled right in front of the chimp exhibit. He must have said to himself, "Self, if you throw that hose over the edge of the exhibit, it will provide an excellent escape ladder for the chimps." And that is exactly what he did. He couldn't have realized the dangerous situation he was creating for the public. Most of the chimps were very neurotic, a little crazy. And when they were out of the exhibit, they could become quite excited. The adults were 4 to 6 times as strong as a man, even stronger than your dad. And a good number of them had periods during which they were very aggressive for no apparent reason. While the chimps were making their escape, I was counting the minutes until quitting time. That was not my usual practice, but then this was not a usual day. It was June 19, and it was my 7th wedding anniversary. My wife, Carol, would be looking good. Oh, I know what that's like, except her name is not Carol. And my mouth was watering for prime rib. When the phone rang, I felt a twinge of fear that something was going to make me late for our celebration. I couldn't have been more accurate. A security guard calmly informed us that not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, but 8 chimpanzees were out of their moated area and mingling with the public. We grabbed our capture equipment and headed out. When we arrived, we were treated to the most frightening sight I have ever witnessed. Jeannie, a highly unpredictable and sometimes very aggressive female, was hovering over a baby stroller. Her mouth was wide open, and her lethal teeth were resting against the skull of a 3-month-old baby. Jeannie was not showing any signs of aggression, but that didn't mean that 2 seconds later she wouldn't be. The baby's mother looked concerned, but she didn't appear to be unduly frightened. She probably thought chimps were just nice all the time. I cautioned our new vet not to make any moves until Jeannie was clear of the baby. Some of the other chimps noticed me because I was in uniform. They had the uniform of the worker there. And they began to holler. Jeannie looked around, saw us, and took off running. All of the chimps knew that we had a tranquilizer gun, and they began to back away. A tranquilizer gun is a gun with some medicine in it. It has a bullet with some medicine in it, and it shoots with air at animals, and that thing doesn't go all the way inside them. The bullet just sticks on the outside. A little bit of medicine goes in so that the animal will fall asleep. But it hurt when they got hit with it. And several of them had been shot with it before. They knew what it was. They didn't want that to happen. I called out to the zoo patrons that these chimps were very dangerous and told them to leave the area for their own safety. We wouldn't attempt any capture activity until they were safely out of sight. When we finally exposed the tranquilizer gun, a very funny thing happened. Toto, our oldest and largest male, led 3 of the females back to the hose and climbed back into the exhibit. This group huddled together and patted each other. That's what chimps do to comfort each other when they're very upset. Other keepers began to arrive, and 2 of the babies recognized them and crawled into their arms. They had sensed the fear in their parents and were in an emotional turmoil, but they calmed down quickly when the keepers carried them to the back of their exhibit. Now, I hope none of you are thinking about people you know that might be like chimpanzees. No calling your siblings chimps, okay? Only 2 rebelled. The erratic Jeannie and the delicate Antoinette, more affectionately known as Annie. They climbed the guardrail and made their way deep into the landscaping between their own moat and the Indian rhino yard. Herman, the Indian rhino, was beside himself with rage. He charged and snorted and even reared up slightly, hoping to get a chance to bash a chimp. The growth between the 2 exhibits was dense and difficult to penetrate. It was a non-negotiable tangle of wild roses and ivy. Our job was to get into a position to shoot a tranquilizer dart into Jeannie first in the hopes that Annie would surrender and climb back into the moat. Dr. Bradford felt that since he was paid the most, he should take the risk of shooting the angry chimp. I told him I thought he was right. He carried the rifle over the guardrail and I followed him with the pistol. That would be used for backup if the first shot missed. We spread the wild roses apart and we saw our 2 escapees. They were huddled in the shadows and screamed their disapproval at our presence. Dr. Bradford took careful aim, and a blast of air propelled the dart swiftly to the generous hindquarters of the female chimpanzee. Jeannie reacted instantly, but not the way we had hoped. She charged, screaming with anger, her teeth showing from ear to ear. I knew that as soon as she saw the pistol, she would stop and run away, but Dr. Bradford didn't know that, so he made her run for it. He was a big man, and when he turned to run, he knocked me flat. The pistol went flying. Dr. Bradford tripped over me and began to fall into the rhino moat. Herman, more enraged than ever, was trying his best to warn the doctor. As Dr. Bradford was falling, I had grabbed one leg and was now holding on to him for dear life. I was sure Jeannie was going to be biting us any second, so I had closed my eyes to concentrate on keeping the vet out of the rhino yard. She must have seen the pistol before it went flying and ceased her charge, because we were never bitten. With great effort, the doctor pulled himself back over the edge of the moat and breathlessly thanked me for grabbing him. We peered back into the undergrowth and saw Jeannie showing the effects of the powerful tranquilizer. As we had hoped, Annie jumped back into the exhibit by herself, and 3 minutes later, Jeannie was asleep for the night. Chimpanzees are perpetual adolescents, never quite ready to take the responsibilities for the freedom they so desperately seem to want. Of all the great apes, they are the most playful and the least dignified. They are childlike. At the time of this writing, Toto is nearly 50 years of age. That's even older than Mike, I think. And still totally irresponsible. In fact, from what I could gather, he is worse than ever. But it's okay because Toto is a chimp. One of the fundamental differences between a man and a chimpanzee is that a man may choose to become responsible. If we are responsible, we have opted for maturity. We have grown up. If we are possessed of all our faculties, growing up is what we are supposed to do. It is expected of us, and if we don't, someone, usually our parents, are disappointed and embarrassed. The Apostle Paul was disappointed with the church members in the city of Corinth. They never had grown up yet. His words expressed his disappointment. 1 Corinthians 3:1-3 says, "But I, brethren, could not address you as spiritual men, but as men of the flesh, as babes in Christ. I fed you with milk and not solid food. for you are not ready for it. And even yet you are not ready, for you are still of the flesh. For while there is jealousy and strife among you, are you not of the flesh and behaving like ordinary men? It's not like they didn't have the knowledge that adults acquire, because they did. It's not that they didn't have the Spirit of God, because they did. They were babies because they couldn't take the responsibility for the freedom to serve and obey Christ. They wouldn't care for others. Like children and adolescents, they simply focused on their own needs. But the maturing Christ focused on the needs of others. The author of Hebrews directs his thoughts to the same issue, maturity. Hebrews 5:11-14 says, about this we have much to say, which is hard to explain, since you have become dull of hearing. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you, again, the first principles of God's Word. You need milk, not solid food, for everyone who lives on milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a child. But solid food is for the mature, for those who have their faculties trained by practice to distinguish from good and evil. Here's a little bit of a maturity test. It's okay for you as children if you're not all the way mature right now. You are learning and growing, and parents teaching you, and as you learn things, you can add another thing onto what you know already. Here's a quick maturity test. Number 1, on whose needs are you focused? Number 2, are you consistent in doing the right thing? Number 3, are you serving others? Practice what you learn in the faith as you learn it, and no time at all you will be maturing.